compose this Learning Planet Institute. Um, and really, I'm thankful for you opening the doors of this festival. I want also to take the chance to recognize this initiative that started many years back, and that I'm sure every year is more and more substantive. And as we are partnering with LPI and broader different type of institutions to work on this vision of making meaningful youth engagement the norm, we thought that this festival was also an opportunity to really reflect and to have a space with young people to think about how all of these mobilizations that are happening in so many parts of the world. And last year we saw this very clearly in so many regions, sometimes labeled in a simplistic way, Gen Z protests, but they are much more than Gen Z protests. They're actually young people expressing themselves, young people claiming to be part, and at the same time, our institutions failing to include them, and failing to make policies more impactful and more trustable. Um, so, as Jade introduced, our office has been working for several months since the establishment of our office in this road to make meaningful youth engagement a norm. No, and of course, this could be felt a little bit an utopia, but utopias are what moves us. And of course, in terms of how to drive that into action, it needs many of us working together from different angles. It needs young people trusting this journey and building this journey. It needs institutions being open to share power. And of course, this also goes for the UN. It needs civil society to mobilize, to connect, to make global agendas local. And especially, it needs dialogue. It needs us to come together. Because the only way of building something that really everyone owns is through participation. And we started with a grant, and we're very thankful to the European Union, and allow me to also use this opportunity to recognize and to thank the European Union to support this initiative of our office. And from that journey, we continued to engage more and more partners. And I see here in this room the Club of Rome. I see Scouts, YMCA. I see UNESCO colleagues. And I'm sure there's much more around that I might be forgetting, and that's the problem when you start naming. So sorry if I forget some. But that's the way we believe we're going to be able to make this utopia real. And we are framing and we're trying to put that vision into a concrete tool that we named the UN Youth Compass. And this compass has, as one of the dimensions, the possibility of bringing us together on specific events. And this is one of those events, one of those spaces where we are trying to bring us together, specifically today to reflect a bit on how we can connect what is happening in so many parts of the world as an expression, as a call to action into also these global policy frameworks. But it's more than that. It's also about how we can build, with the support of researchers, with the support of new tools, different ways of engaging, and how can we use this global platform, which is the UN, to support and to envision that. I know this sounds big, abstract, but there's a whole roadmap of it. But for today, I think the most important for us is actually to be here, to have space to hear from each other, to learn. We're going to have many colleagues trying to take notes, trying to be very clear about what is happening, protecting everyone, because as Jade says, this is a sensible topic and it might be much more sensible for some of you that actually might be in the countries where some of these protests are happening, and not necessarily human rights are granted for youth. So, so let's try to get this space to be meaningful for all. Let's try to connect among ourselves, because after being 2 years working for the UN, which is a very structured space, and that's why I haven't talked before on my socks. But we didn't choose Learning Planet as a coincidence. We choose this space because also we know this space allows us this connection. And at the end, what makes institutions to move, to change, is the people. So these human connections are essential to move us into that direction. So I stop here and thank you for the ones online, and some of you are joining very late from the flags I saw that were passing on the chat. And for the ones in person, thank you for choosing to be here Friday evening, that you might be doing many, many other things. So I think this is also a clear example about the constant will of young people to participate and to join. And every time that when the UN, we open the doors, there's more and more youth trying to contribute. And I hope that today is also an opportunity to identify the concrete actions that we can take, and how we also move from utopia into transformation. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Felipe. And honestly, imagine how different conferences could be if we weren't allowed to wear shoes. The energy is already different. As Felipe mentioned, none of today would be possible without the support and partnership of the European Union through this flagship project on making meaningful youth engagement the norm. With that, we are honoured to give the floor to the Acting Head of Unit of Youth, Education and Culture at the EU International Partnerships, Annika Florin, to share a few words about the EU's continued leadership on advancing young people's rights and opportunities. Annika should be joining us online. The floor is yours. Oh, Annika, I think you might be muted. Annika, can you hear us? She cannot.
You are muted, Annika.
Thank you so much, Annika. Can you hear me okay? Yeah, it's perfect. Do you know what that sounds like to me? That sounds like good news, which is something that we often don't get a lot of in today's world. I saw quite a few clap reacts, some heart reacts from everyone online. And yeah, I think it's important to actually express gratitude when institutional players are putting funding behind these things. They are opening doors to young people. I think she mentioned that they've funded over 1,000 youth projects. That's amazing. That's what we need more of. And to kind of shift the conversation, we are used to a lot of bad news at the moment. I'm so sure that you guys are very used to opening up social media, opening up the news, and feeling quite genuinely horrified at the state of the world. Youth-led movements are not new. From student movements to civil rights struggles, young people have always been at the forefront of social change. But what's different today is how widespread, interconnected, and actually digitally driven that youth movements have become, and how often they emerge precisely where formal participation channels feel blocked or ineffective. And I'm sure you've seen that a lot of governments and institutions often express alarm at the scale of youth protests. I mean, as Felipe mentioned, they're often sort of reductionistly labeled, Gen Z protest. And that's almost where the conversation in the media ends. But what we should be asking is, why are young people protesting? What demands are they making? Why do they feel angry at the institutions of today? And so this next segment is all about listening and dialogue. And it's where we're going to hear some of your voices, where you're going to share with each other, and where you're actually going to be answering some really pressing questions around these issues. To everyone online, we're going to be putting you in breakout rooms. For everyone in person, there will be dedicated student facilitators around the room. And if you can kind of roughly just divide yourselves among them, that would be amazing. But before we go into these breakout rooms, I also just want to invite you to reflect on the art of discussion. We talk a lot about listening, and we want to be listened to by leaders. But I actually think listening is a very difficult skill, and it's one that I invite all of us to try and practice in these breakout rooms right now. So maybe notice kind of who tends to be taking up more space, or if you yourself tend to notice that you have a lot to say, maybe be attentive to someone in your group who hasn't said something and maybe invite them to share their opinion. And I really believe that it's in these micro moments where we bring people together who might not know each other that we get to practice these skills that then we can take to these intergenerational conversations. So let's do some breakout rooms. And we've got the questions on screen for everyone online and in the room. And we'll come back in 30 minutes. Thank you. Cool. So these student facilitators are going to spread themselves around the rooms. Student facilitators, maybe put your hands up. Perfect. And I think we'll end up with groups of roughly 5 or 6. So if you just want to go to a corner of the room and find a facilitator. Thank you. Hi everyone, I just wanted to let you all know that you have about 5 minutes left. I know it's a struggle, but try and wrap it up or get to the next question or maybe synthesize something if you want to share it. Thanks. Hi everyone. I'm sorry. The time has come. If everyone can slowly make their way back. The problem is we've got everyone online. They're just left hanging. They've come out of the breakout rooms and they're just left hanging. So yeah, if we can slowly make our way back, that'd be amazing. If everyone can slowly make their way back to the seats. Hi, everyone online. Hello. Oh, I can see you waving. Yay. Hello. Love the reactions. Love the chat. Thank you all for waiting so patiently for us. Really appreciate that. I hope you enjoyed your breakouts and they were fruitful. It's also amazing seeing in the chat online how many of you are already connecting, building these bridges. It's amazing. Okay, I think we're waiting for one final group. If you guys over there wouldn't mind coming and taking a seat. Okay. Hi, everyone. Welcome back. I hope you found that a really fruitful opportunity to get to meet people who are interested in similar things, to share ideas. We've got a lot of people from all around the world in the room, so I hope that you just got to learn from different perspectives. In the interest of time, we're only going to get to hear from 2 groups in person and hopefully 1 online. So if anyone feels really passionate, maybe is anyone willing to put their hand up and share on behalf of their group? Yeah? Perfect. Okay, amazing. Can we welcome her to the stage to share some insights?
Well, hello everyone. Please be gentle with me as I am the first rapporteur. So, and I know you've all been discussing about the questions. My name is Maria Kiprioto. I work with the UNESCO Youth Section, and I was part of the group that was sitting around this table. So, very interesting questions overall. Broadly, on the first question about what are the challenges with respect to public institutions and in terms of them not enabling a meaningful youth engagement and young people to be able to express themselves. One of the, I think one of the main, I would say the main sentiments that came out from the group can be summarized around 3 words. Basically, young people feel frustration, feel that their power is taken away from them. And so they are seeking ways to reclaim their power through protests, through whether online or on the streets or at the streets. There is a feeling broadly that institutional processes and engagement in institutional processes is more performative than meaningful, than truly inclusive, speaking about the real issues that young people face. There is also a perception that there is privileged access, so specific categories of young people may have privileged access, specific groups of people have privileged access to institutional processes of engagement. And then there was also a broader admission about youth being more knowledgeable today. Like today, because of the connectivity, because of the capacity of a young person in a country where youth engagement processes on channels do not necessarily exist in the same way as in a different country, because of the fact that young person can see what's happening in another country in the world that has youth engagement processes where young people have more space to engage and opportunity to engage. There is a lot, so there is knowledge about what is happening in the world, what other young people are doing in other countries. So there is this frustration coming out of that, and young people have more resources and knowledge to organize. On the second, I invite the members of the group, if they'd like to please stand up and add in case I forget something. Please feel free to do so because it has been quite rich. And maybe, yes, just one last point on the first question, a member of the group suggested rightfully that also sometimes youth organizations youth organizations themselves need to do better work in representing all the different groups of youth and all the different voices of young people. On the second question around the role around why young people are using more social media and protests versus institutionalized spaces, the group felt that spaces are too technical. They are too technical to engage, so this is not accessible and easy for all different categories of young people to engage. There is also there is a great one of the things that they asserted was that there is great significant absence of youth-to-youth spaces where actually young people from different backgrounds can come together and discuss about their issues, and then those can be channeled in a way into traditional institutional processes. On the third question about what multilateral organizations can do and how they can engage in an era of digital and decentralized engagement and protest, the group actually felt, had a question about whether whether it is actually digital first. There were opinions where people said that actually young people are now creating their own communities away from social media, and they're finding ways to express themselves and engage that are not necessarily through digital media and digital spaces, and that more and more digital spaces can be influenced by algorithms, and so there is an issue of algorithmic agency there. Again, in terms of what multilateral organizations can do, a suggestion was that it is important to create spaces where young people can really express themselves about their issues, their day-to-day issues, what is happening in their schools, what is happening in their communities, and not just bring young people to tell multilateral organizations what they should be doing about their global work. So this is the output of the group. And if I may take one maximum 2 minutes just to, because UNESCO has been doing, we have actually, thank you so much, we have actually been doing a new study, a project, a knowledge project on exactly the question that you raised, Jade. Why are Gen Z young people protesting today? Why? So we're looking into the motivations, what motivates Gen Z civic and political participation. We've launched a call for papers from Gen Z youth. We've received 2,000 abstracts. 2,000. Analyzing those abstracts gives us a lot of answers to these questions, and I can confirm that some of the answers of my group, of the group that I was in, are accurate. Frustration, a feeling of exclusion, a feeling of reclaiming power, a feeling of lack of intergenerational justice. The issue of intergenerational justice is coming up a lot on those abstracts, and we hope to be able to publish some of them in the coming months. And also, one of the things that wasn't mentioned in the group, and if I may contribute it here to this tribune, is the silence. Is that a lot of young people choose silence, disengagement, because they are so fed up. They are so, they feel excluded. They feel they have no ways, even through digital media, even through the protests, even through institutional spaces. They feel that the best way is to be silent, and through their silence show that they are disappointed and disillusioned by the ways in which currently the public space is accommodating youth engagement and youth voices. Thank you very much. I would have more to say, but I don't want to abuse the time. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
To the group if they want to say something.
Yeah, amazing.
Thank you, Jane.
Wow, that was an impressively comprehensive report on everything that you said, and thank you for sharing the incredible work that UNESCO are doing. It genuinely fills my heart with so much hope, a very rare emotion in today's world, to hear that big institutional bodies are really listening and submitting these calls to young people to share their voices. So thank you. We're now going to hear from Mayada, called out there, nominated to share on behalf of her group. Can we give her a round of applause?
Thank you, thank you, thank you. I have to share a sentiment that I felt from our group. Actually, the institutions felt the youth. I will start with the recent protest reveal that we talked about: Iran, Kenya, Morocco, Sudan, and Bangladesh. We noticed that youth do not reject institutions. Institutions feel youth realities because the traditional mechanisms are too slow, too simplistic, voice without influence, and too unsafe. Repression, political violence, lack of civil space. In Sudan, 2019, brutality was political, meant to raise the cost of participation of the young people. Also, the engagement through institutions is often high cost, low impact. And the question why youth choose streets and social media, because most of my group said it's faster, cheaper, safer, and more effective, because it's also bypass the gatekeepers and red tapes that institutions actually do. It shows numbers, urgency, and collective will in real time. And phones mean coordination plus archive and protest. So in Kenya and Morocco, there is an observation that the digital mobilization worked, but institutions were not ready to hear the collective no, even in Iran. Institutions know how to receive suggestions, but not rejections. Yes. Other realities we must face. One of my group member said, polarity grow when no institutional bridge exist from protest to policy. Also, the double standards, especially from the Western hemisphere, when we saw the Palestinian mobilizations and how they've been treating the protest in double standards. The question of fear, freedom of speech become more evident more than ever. Okay. Peaceful change require power, willing to be challenged without force. So the last question, we didn't invest so much time of it, but the role of multilateral organization today is to shift from gatekeepers to enablers, to put the priority to protect civic space and safety, lower the cost of engagement for youth, and respond to and translate the protests into policy. And how to move forward with digital and AI. Use the digital media for listening, not just communication, and turn like a couple of examples like Model UN from simulation into real policy pipeline, and to use the AI to aggravate youth voices safely, reduce bureaucracy, and to create feedback loops. Yeah, at the bottom of the line that I got from our group, that the youth are not abandoning institutions, they're just testing them. And the system does not move, but the young people will move it. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mayada. I've had a question from online asking if you guys can ask questions. Sadly, we don't have time. I know, I'm sorry. The people above me have spoken. I know, I see you fighting. I know, I'm sorry. But we do have time for one breakout room to share. Ayush, I'm so sorry. I'm seeing your face. I know. Can we take Ayush's question? I feel like he's really passionate. Can we? Yeah? Can you make it quick? Come on, Ayush, yeah, I think so. Should we let him speak? Yeah, come on. Oh, silenced.
I'm audible?
Yeah, I think we can hear you.
Hello, I'm audible? Should I go ahead just quickly say?
Yes, we hear you.
So, hello everyone, I'm Ayush Krishnapati, I'm journalist from India, and we are talking about the protest. So, both the time in Nepal and Bangladesh, I was in the field, I was on the ground, I was listening people, I was communicating with the people that how they are doing it and why they are doing it, what the kind of medium they are using it. the one of the key factor that I got to know about them, they are using Instagram and the Facebook in a much better way that most of the influencers were doing it. They know how to do the messaging. They know how to channelize the work. And I'm so happy that the most of the people right now doing research paper on it, even talking about the people, and we are discussing about it. So yeah, youth can change. Now any uncle who's come to me under my face and say that kind of things, that you can't do this, I can happily say and can show them that we did Nepal and Bangladesh, we can do. So youth are the new power, and we can change everything we want. Thank you so much. That's my opinion.
Woo! Round of applause. Thank you so much for sharing, Aisha.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. And it's amazing to hear how passionate you are about this space. I'm so grateful. And yeah, the role of social media, as we all know, is absolutely monumental in shaping youth voices in the future. And I think a lot of the institutional players don't even realize just how powerful social media is as an organizing tool in keeping people safe, in doing effective conversation work that can't be done on the ground. So thank you for highlighting that. Okay, I believe the online team have chosen one representative from a breakout room to speak. Maybe if they can go ahead and put them on. Am I right in thinking that you'll choose? Yeah, cool. So one moment, I think we're just connecting to the person who's going to speak. Yes. I think your audio might not be working. One more online.
Hello, everyone.
Hello, we can hear you. Aisha, take the floor. Thank you so much. Unfortunately, I didn't capture your name there, but we'll give you a round of applause. Amazing. And we're going to hear from Aisha. Aisha, take the floor. And thank you for all the reactions. We love the support online.
Hello, everyone. Am I audible to everyone? Like, it about boys. I thought you are feel like directly caught the so I think thank you.
Amazing. Thank you, Aisha. Round of applause for Aisha. Thank you. I really appreciate you sharing such a lived experience of these kind of abstract topics sometimes, and for really pointing out the urgency of youth participation movements. Thank you. We're a little bit behind schedule, as some of you might have realized. I think we're approaching 7 p.m. So we're about half an hour behind schedule, but we've got some incredible panelists coming up. So I would urge you to stay and listen if you can. We've spoken a lot about youth being needed, their participation being more needed than ever in decision-making processes. And I'm really excited because our next speakers are literally doing that exact work. They've invented the UN Youth Compass, which is a framework they're going to talk about more about how youth participation can be formalized into institutional processes. Can we welcome them on with another round of applause? Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jade, and thank you so much, everybody, for participating in this interactive discussion, both online and in person. We hope you learned as much as we did when we were listening to these conversations, and we hope that you felt that this was a space that was valuable to you, because this is exactly what we're trying to create with the UN Youth Compass. So before we get there, actually, it's not going to be me, it's going to be my colleague, Matthew. I just want to quickly introduce ourselves. My name is Bianca. And this is my colleague Matthew, and we're both working in the United Nations Youth Office, which is a new office that was created by a General Assembly mandate in 2022 to support advancing meaningful youth engagement at all levels and advancing youth affairs across the United Nations system and beyond. I mentioned this morning for those people that were in the event at UNESCO celebrating Education Day. We're not doing it alone. We're doing it with partners within the UN system, civil society organizations, national governments, and of course, at the center of everything we do is working with young people yourselves and youth organizations. So with that in mind, I just wanted to kind of reflect on the fact that we heard a lot of challenges that young people are facing when engaging in policy and decision-making processes around the world. But from where I sit at the United Nations Youth Office, one thing that at least in my opinion, that I feel is that we've never been in a better place than we are today to really institutionalize meaningful youth engagement in policy and decision-making processes, because there is this overall recognition of the important role that young people play. Nobody can ignore it anymore. It's all over the news. You know, everyone knows that young people have power. Maybe some of them are not that comfortable with the power that young people have, but definitely it's something that cannot be ignored any longer. And this is what we feel at the UN Youth Office as an opportunity. And what is the role of institutions? That was the last question of our activity. So we were reflecting exactly at that. And we were thinking, what is something that the UN Youth Office can create to support young people, not to represent young people, but to create opportunities for you to represent yourselves in these spaces. So that's why we created the UN Youth Compass. And Matthew, over to you.
Thank you, Bianca. So I will try to be very brief as well, because you've heard a bit about this from others, and more importantly, you'll hear from people who have engaged in different parts of this, which I think is the really important part of the work. But maybe just to say in a couple of words, our office launched this UN Youth Compass last year with this specific idea of trying to increase the inclusivity and diversity of young people who are able to meaningfully engage in policy and decision-making spaces at all levels. And we know that's a massive goal in terms of what we're trying to tackle together. But the idea behind this was really how we can capitalize on this momentum that we've seen, but also reduce the silos that we also see happening a lot of the times across these different spaces, and to try to better bring these spaces together as a space for shared learning, shared growth, and something that we can collectively move on together when we're talking about making meaningful youth engagement the norm. And I think one really important part about this, which I'm sure you'll hear a bit more about from others, is that the compass wasn't just about, of course, one key part of this is about how we equip young people and better provide access to information, opportunities, etc., but also about institutions. How do we better equip institutions with the right skill sets, knowledge, and capacities to effectively engage young people as part of these processes? Because as you've also heard from many people here, we know young people are waiting to come in and want to be part of this, but often there's barriers that prevent them from engaging. And so how can we capitalize on momentum behind things like the Pact for the Future and others to help ensure that young people are being effectively engaged by the institutions that manage these processes overall? So maybe all of this, just to say that I think our vision for the compass is really clear in terms of where we're hoping that we can collectively take this together with all of you. But now it's really about the journey in terms of how we get there. We know this is an evolving process. A huge part of this is also about sharing, learning together, also hearing from young people who participate in these processes, learning what's working, what's not, how we can continue to strengthen this together. And I want to really also put this emphasis on the fact that this is something we want to co-create with all of you here in the room, but also online and around the world. A big thank you again to the EU, who's been an incredible partner and champion in this work, but also equally as important to the many UN partners, civil society partners, and most importantly, perhaps youth partners, young people, youth-led movements, youth-led organizations, et cetera, around the world who are continuing to prioritize engagement in these spaces, even when we know sometimes they don't always work exactly as we want them to. So with that in mind, I will pass it back to Jade. And as I said, most importantly, we're excited for you to hear from some of the young people and partners who have been engaging in different parts of this work over the past year.
Thank you, Matthew and Bianca. So we're moving to the final segment of the night, which is 2 rapid fire panels. We've got some incredible young activists from around the world, and I'm really excited to dig into their experience today and talk more about how the Youth Compass is kind of being operationalized in their experiences. So I'd first like to introduce our first 3 speakers. We've got the wonderful Venus Alves from the UN Youth Office Youth Reference Group from the Philippines. Round of applause. Woo! Love the support. We've got Lael Bayum, I'm probably butchering your names, I'm so sorry, member of the UN Youth Office funded youth cohort at CSW 2025 from Lebanon. Woo! It'd be kind of nice if you could all be on the same one, wouldn't it? So maybe if we put you all here, so if you want to sit there. And finally, we have Max Genin from the Working Group on Youth and Task Force on Meaningful Youth Participation Principles. Round of applause. Amazing. Love the applause online as well. Thank you, everyone. Okay. Amazing. So I'm going to invite each speaker to reflect not just on what they did, but on what made their engagement meaningful. And meaningful might also mean challenging, and that's okay. Venus, drawing on your experience in the inaugural Youth Reference Group of the UN Youth Office, why is it important to embed youth participation in strategic decision-making processes? Maybe I'll give you.
Thank you so much, Jane. Thank you, everyone. Thank you to the UN Youth Office for having us here. Allow me to respond to that question in 3 points. First of all, I think it's important because as we all know in this room, multilateralism needs us. Our institutions need us. The UN Secretary General knows it. All of us in this room knows it. We know it. But unfortunately, some world leaders are singing a different tune. At Davos this year at the World Economic Forum, Prime Minister Mark Carney of Canada gave an otherwise exceptional speech. I'm not here to summarize that. If you have time, I invite you to read that or listen to that speech, where he mourned the end of the post-war order or the multilateral order as we know it. He gave some very real points about where we're headed that should give us moments to reflect on. So world leaders are already offering their eulogies to multilateralism, but young people are just arriving to the party. They're already conducting the funeral, but we're just getting invited. And I think if our institutions want young people to believe in the UN, to continue believing in our institutions amid this exceptional crisis of faith in the world order, then you need to start or to continue offering concrete entry points for engagement. And that's the first one. And second, this is more for young people, really. And Mark Carney also said something. I know I'm not a huge, I'm not saying, I'm not coming out as a fan, but he said something else that really stuck to me. So if we're not sitting at the table, then we are on the menu. And I think young people are on the menu every day. We see as thousands of kids and young children being massacred in Gaza and in Sudan. We see this in how trans kids and young women are being robbed of their health care and their reproductive autonomy, and how our generation and all future generations are effectively denied our right to live in a livable planet. And if we do a little exercise and count the number of young people sitting in those rooms, I don't think we're going to come up with a very high number. And which finally brings me to my last point. including young people is smart, common sense policy. Young people are experts, not just of our own issues, but of all the issues that that institutions are excluding us from. And I think our age gives us the unique advantage of not being old enough to have ruined the world, or not being old enough to be attached to solutions that frankly do not work anymore. And I don't know if I still have a bit of time, and I'm sure Leah and Max will talk more on that. But I was privileged enough to be part of two UN youth advisory groups, one advising the OHHR on the future of human rights for young people, and one as part of the inaugural youth reference group of the UN Youth Office, where we advise the UN on how to operationalize or put into practice meaningful youth engagement. And just to end, two of the key lessons that I learned from that time, where we contributed to strategic plans, participated in working groups. Unfortunately, I don't have time to speak about what we did, but two lessons stood out to me. First, we need to include young people now, but this sense of urgency should not be an excuse for processes that are not well thought of or they're not intentional. And I'm not saying that the OHHR or the UN Youth Office were not intentional in how they involved young people. They were. But at the same time, we need to acknowledge that these processes take time to perfect. And which brings me to my second point. I think what really worked for me and for some of the colleagues was giving us time to be flexible. It's one thing to create processes that work. It's another thing to put them into practice. And I think what happened in that experience, it was a journey for us and for the UN Youth Office. We were learning as we were doing. And I guess this small piece of advice to other UN agencies or other countries who are taking on this journey of including young people is to not be afraid to make mistakes, because co-creating these processes with young people also means making mistakes with young people. And I think that's a scary journey, but one that we need to embark upon. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Venus. I loved how practical your advice was, how grounded to the real world, and also how you referenced this crisis of trust, which young people very much have in their institutions, and almost paving the way for how they could regain that trust. Nayal, having participated in the Commission on the Status of Women last year with support from the UN Youth Office, how did that experience shape your understanding of meaningful youth engagement, and what impact did it have on your work and advocacy?
First of all, thank you, Jade, for the moderation. I want to send a huge thanks to the UN Youth Affairs Office, because genuinely they've been an entire support to us as youth representatives, and as well to governments in decision-making processes, because they've been intentional with the people that they've been picking. And that's a very essential point that needs to be put out there. I want to begin from a very specific reality, because youth engagement only makes sense when it's grounded in the conditions young people are actually living through. I speak from Lebanon, from the Arab region, and from an in-between space that many young people now occupy. Institutions in collapse, diplomacy and lived loss, systems that are trying to respond, and realities that are moving way faster than they actually can. Across the region, youth people are navigating violence, repression, and fear as part of everyday life. In Iran, young people are punished for demanding dignity. Palestinians in Gaza face starvation alongside continued forced displacement across the West Bank. Kurdish communities in Iraq and minorities in Syria live under constant threat, where survival itself has become political. In Lebanon, people in the south and in the suburbs of Beirut have lost land, homes, crops, and lives, including through the use of white phosphorus. I want to acknowledge the nonviolent organizers that are working across these contexts, who continue to document, mobilize, and protect others, while institutions struggle to respond at the scale required, which I'm sure some of you here would be involved. So I'd just really like to give a round of applause to the organizers. Thank you. These realities shape entire societies, not only those directly targeted. In Lebanon, more than half of the population now lives abroad. This sustained outflow has produced a deep brain drain, but remaining in the country does not guarantee participation either. Many young people stay and still find themselves locked out of public life. A concrete example illustrates this clearly, which is part of my youth participation. In Lebanon's Ministry of Foreign Affairs, we have not seen a diplomatic recruitment track in over 7 years. The youngest diplomat today in Lebanon is 33 years old, and when the next cohort is eventually recruited, there will be nearly a decade between these generations. This gap has excluded an entire generation from public service, not because they left the country, but because no institutional entry point even existed. And that's just one ministry out of everything else within the public sector. This exclusion is closely linked to the collapse of education across the region. Since we're celebrating World Education Day, might as well touch on that point. In Lebanon, children have lost more than a year and a half of schooling, with over 500 public schools repurposed for humanitarian purposes and shelters. In Gaza, children have been denied access to education for nearly 2 years. Syrian children, both inside the country and in displacement, continue to face fragmented and unreliable education systems. These breaks in education weaken the path to participation and shape political futures long before young people are ever even invited into decision-making spaces. In response to this vacuum, civil society and diaspora network have stepped in. But this is still showing initiative and solidarity, but it also reveals a deeper problem, because when access to education depends on crowdfunding, the burden of governance has already shifted away from public systems and onto those with the least protection and the least certainty. During CSW in New York, I was nominated by the Youth Office to represent Lebanese youth. The intention was to coordinate with the Lebanese government. Despite repeated outreach from both myself and the office, no response ever came. Engagement advanced only through informal lobbying and personal workarounds rather than through a functioning public mechanism. At the same time, I contacted a Lebanese speaker who had intervened at a high-level UN side event on intergenerational dialogue. I asked whether a network existed or what could be built after these moments, and I briefly shared what Lebanese civil society in France had been trying to develop. The exchange ended up with a polite wish for luck and no further engagement. These experiences point to a wider pattern in which participation often stops at visibility. Speaking opportunities are not consistently connected to responsibility, continuity, or ecosystem building. For young people observing from the outside, this reinforces the sense that access rarely translates into pathways. This raises a fundamental question about what can be built when public sectors across the region are nearing collapse. When ministries are understaffed, schools are closed, and recruitment freezes stretch across years, governance narrows rather than disappears. Participation becomes shaped by blockage and endurance instead of merit and willingness. And I'm going to wrap up by saying that intergovernmental spaces matter in this environment because they are the ones that can hold continuity when national systems cannot, provide standards where capacities are uneven, and preserve institutional memory when turnover and paralysis dominate. This leads to a clear recommendation, particularly for countries of the global north and especially for Europe. I hope the EU Commissioner is here with us still on the Zoom meeting. Much of the work sustaining youth engagement today is carried by people operating in between civil society and institutions, diaspora and country of origin, and between crisis contexts and policy processes. These actors carry political risk and responsibility while operating with little to no protection, no clear status, and limited long-term security. So my ask would be for the EU to consider is how would you grant protection to people like us who are trying to navigate these spaces in between, trying to coordinate between EU institutions and on-the-ground civil society grassroots organizations to be protected, to have some sort of a diplomatic immunity, and to be able to carry this work forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Layal. I love the powerful question at the end. That was really important. Max, over the past year, you were a member of a working group that brought together different UN entities and young people to advance the implementation of the Pact for the Future. You were particularly involved in developing the core guiding principles for meaningful youth engagement. Could you share more about this work?
Sure, but I just want to comment on Venus and Lyall's. I think when you have these sorts of panels, people tend to look at you as like the leader of something, but this is duplicated in all of you out there times a million. And hearing what they're doing, what you all are doing, is what I'm about to answer, gives me a lot of hope. I think we're at a great time of institutional crisis, not just within this system, but globally. There's a lot of rising polarization, and it's very difficult, especially for young people. We already have enough problems as it is being young. Then you're compounded with, institutional blockages to try to make any solid change. That can be very frustrating for a young person. What I think we have hope in, outside of all of you, is the youth office. I'm not here as some like lobbyist that's to sell the youth office to all you. But they did a really good job. They mandated in this working group youth representation out of all the UN entities. There was a mandate to be included. So much so that in some of our meetings, the technical experts out of those UN entities were not allowed to speak. They weren't allowed to input. We are the ones that had the voice alongside the chiefs of the unit or those that were presenting on something, which I think is very strong. And that should be replicated and duplicated across every member state and across every community, frankly speaking. Additionally, what we did very well is in those consultations, we let young people lead them, and we heard from young people around to form everything. And we had a coalition of some member states that really supported this work that were interviewed. And they were really open to hearing our thoughts and hearing how we wanted to design. It was really a bilateral process between us and them that we would iterate upon. That was very encouraging because it was the first time that I've seen where you have a government power coming to the table with you, ideating these meaningful youth engagement principles, taking it seriously and giving you their feedback, treating you as an equal, which is essentially what we've been asking for. The other thing I wanted to say, though, is, oftentimes people will look to intergovernmental processes to the UN or multilateral fora. It's not the only place. I say this ad nauseum because I think people forget that the UN is a fantastic organization. It does act as a convener and a facilitator. However, you all have your own domestic systems. You have local communities that you can go to that all engage bilaterally, trilaterally within their own systems and with the UN and other multilateral fora. That is just a strong enough a place to make strong policy impact and to make your voices heard. I also think sometimes young people need to assert themselves way more. Sometimes these sorts of authoritative positions, it's very difficult to come in. You may feel shy. You may feel like you're stepping out of bounds. And I just invite people to ask themselves a fundamental question, which is, why do I feel bad for advocating for myself? Who socially conditioned me to feel bad about that? And I think that's just the nature of how our social system functions. But I really want to applaud Felipe and the entire UN Youth Office team, because I think they did a stupendous job and with the limited resources and time that we had to include us. And I can only hope to see that we magnify that 10 times over with not only his office, but globally here on out.
Who made us feel bad for advocating for ourselves? Oh, what a question. Yeah, thank you so much. That was quite a panel. Don't know about you, but I'm feeling, I guess, somewhat heavy in a way, because it's a reminder of just how much needs to change in the world and almost how far we still are from that. But I feel so grateful for you all doing the work that you're doing and trying to do the impossible task of also representing millions of people, which I think us youth are frequently expected to do. And, we're not asking a 50-year-old to represent the generation of 50 to 60-year-olds. So it is an impossible task. I think recognizing that is important. Can we give our speakers a wonderful round of applause? Thank you. Amazing, thank you. You can take your seats. Our first panel focused more on global frameworks, and our final panel is going to bring us closer to mainstreamed implementation. Because meaningful youth engagement doesn't sustain itself. It requires knowledge, capacity, data, institutional commitment at national and local levels. So today I'm going to be asking our next panelists to share one concrete example. Oh my God, getting emotional. Something tangible that shows what it looks like when meaningful youth engagement moves from principle to practice. So I'd love to invite to the stage, we have Jacob, Zakira, Nolita, and Laura. We give them a big round of applause. Thank you. And I believe we might have Zakira joining online. Is that right? Brilliant. Cool. I'd love to first start with you, Jacob. As Executive Director of the Global Student Forum, could you please share an example of how national or institutional capacities are being strengthened to make meaningful youth engagement the norm? Is it not working? Have you flick up the thing? Yeah.
Thank you. Yes. So I think I want to share the story of how we worked in the Global Student Forum with the UN Youth Office. So to those of you who don't know, the Global Student Forum is the world's biggest umbrella organization for student organizations. So it's really trying to bring student organizations together across the world. So a lot of people might not know the Global Student Forum itself, but they know organizations who are members of the Global Student Forum, because it's really trying to say, how can we bring student organizations at a local, at an institutional level together with what happens at a national level, at a regional level, and in the end, to what's happening at the global level. So I think when we started engaging with the UN Youth Office, we were talking about, okay, how do we make this journey of bringing the perspectives of students on the ground in the classroom to these big UN processes that the UN Youth Office is working on. So there was this whole thing about how do we translate this extremely difficult language sometimes that happens in the international space into something that's tangible for people, because we know it has an effect on their life, but we need to make sure that the concerns that they bring up, that the problems and the solutions that they propose on a local or national level get translated into language and mechanisms that can actually have impact there at the global level. So I think we also brought this to the UN Youth Office and to the people who were there and said, this is also what we're bringing to the table. This is also what we're doing. So we experienced a lot of understanding of kind of like that we took a lot of time sometimes to bring perspectives back, because we needed to bring it back to consult with people. So I think this kind of the journey of taking something that's highly abstract or far away from people's lived reality and bringing it to people on the ground takes time. But if the institutions are ready to take that time and ready to support in translating these big and complicated mechanisms into something that resonates with people on the ground, then it is actually possible. So I think for me, that is the one concrete example I want to mention.
Amazing. Thank you so much for sharing. And it's so wonderful to hear positive representation of like how it can be done, how you can be listened, and how the abstract can become something more concrete when the dialogue is happening. Thank you for sharing. I'd now love to go to Zakira, who is joining us online. Zakira, reflecting on your participation in the first ever high-level meeting on youth at last year's UN General Assembly, How did the meeting contribute to advancing meaningful youth engagement at the global level?
The meeting was historical and marking a new era of making youth leadership the center stage, but also a shift, a structural and political shift in how youth engagement is positioned within global governance. The meeting happening during the General Assembly, the high-level week, in the presence of state members, decision makers, who were there to report on their progress and their mechanisms on youth engagement, but also placing youth very strategically in these key moments in allowing their interventions, their remarks, and making youth's presence very visible. I think that signals, that indicates that the issues of youth can no longer be a conversation that we can have in parallel or in side events. It is the center of every issue we have to address, whether if it's the issues of development, peace, or human rights. And also that event moving forward, it moved the conversation from should we include youth to how do we include youth? How do we make meaningful engagement of youth possible? How do we make our mechanisms better? And most importantly, the meeting consolidated political will and created a momentum of institutional follow-through, which is an incredible beginning point for making meaningful engagement happen if we also address the structural challenges that exist for youth's meaningful inclusion on national level. But I think that all of this also reflects a broader reality that we are at a moment where it has become impossible to ignore youth. It has become impossible to continue with the long-standing marginalization and exclusion of youth that have continued for decades. We see the youth's inclusion, their visibility being normalized, but also witness political will, which I think happens because of top-down level efforts like the UN Youth Compass or meetings like that, or just generally on multilateral level pushing for it. But also it's because this generation of young people, they do not settle for less. They will not wait to be included. They change the whole, what political participation looks like, what inclusion looks like. They lead revolutions, they organize, they mobilize. And Bangladesh is one of our recent examples. So I think that has become an issue of, it has changed the whole equation, and it has become an issue of institutions' survival, their relevance, their sustainability. If they exclude youth, they risk making decisions, making policies that are not effective, that doesn't work. So youth of this generation know their power. They know their right to shape the decisions about their lives, about their rights, about their communities. And therefore, youth inclusion is no longer optional. So therefore, it's incredibly important that we create mechanisms that actually leads us toward how we can address the structural challenges that exist for youth's engagement on national level or international level, and ask questions of who do we leave behind? Is an immigrant young person who lives in a country and doesn't speak the language, when we talk about inclusion, have we considered them? Have we considered a young woman in Afghanistan who doesn't have access to internet or a phone, or just the issue of intersectionality in lived realities. As we create spaces, as we create mechanisms, we have to ensure that the quantitative indicators of measuring impact, we should look beyond that, and have a deeper analysis of the nuances as we try to meaningfully engage youth. But one other important point I wanted to mention, that we often talk about youth's access to opportunities, and their lack of awareness of opportunities. But I think that it doesn't have to do with the youth, but institutions' capacity. Working in Afghanistan, being the receiving end of the state's intent to engage youth, in efforts and programs to engage youth, I have learned that while states might be interested in engaging youth, they often they lack trained staff, clear mandates, mechanisms, or tools to measure impact beyond participation numbers. And if we want to move forward, we need to understand how do we strengthen the capacity of states to be able to reach youth everywhere, and engage them meaningfully. Thank you.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Zakira. I really appreciate the call for intersectionality, particularly when we're creating these reports, these measures. Like, how can we ensure that, as you said, we're including the voices that are the hardest to reach? I think someone who could potentially speak well to that is our next speaker, Laura. Laura, a new global education monitoring report on youth engagement in education policy and decision-making was launched earlier today. Could you share a bit more about what this report explores and why it matters?
Absolutely, and thank you so much for having me. A brief introduction about who we are, because all of you might know us. I work for the Global Education Monitoring Report. We are an independent report hosted by UNESCO, and we have the mandate to monitor progress towards SDG 4. So that's a very big task with a lot of responsibility, but I think that you need evidence and you need data in order to take decisions. I guess the biggest challenge that we have is this challenge of responsibility, and actually trying to be accountable and trying to make sure that we hear and listen to the voices when we give our policy-oriented recommendations. We launched today in the morning a very important report in partnership with the UN Youth Office. It has been a 2-year process with a lot of consultation, co-design. I think we have gone up the ladder many ways and many steps. I think that is a very, very good contribution. The process was done through a series of surveys. So first of all, we developed a survey addressed to governments. Out of the 193 UN member countries, 93 responded. So it's quite a good rate. But then, of course, if you ask only the government, then you only have one side of the story. So a lot of the governments were saying, yeah, we have these mechanisms. We have a lot of things in place. 1 out of 3 actually said that they have formal mechanism, just talking about the first question that we were referring to. But then we wanted to see the other side of the coin, the other side of the equation. And then we asked youth and student organizations. Asking them was not easy, because then you need to have them representative and meaningful. And as our director was saying today, youth organizations have many shapes and colors. So what we try to do is go to the meaningful representative. I think, I don't know if I'm allowed by the rules to mention my colleague, but we went to umbrella organizations, global organizations, nationwide student organizations. Why? Because they have formalized mechanisms to go to the governments. That means by no means that protest, activism, social media is neglected. It's a different way, but just to capture it in a form of an indicator and a measurement is just quite a monumental task, and we were actually discussing how can we actually improve this to capture the views of those that are not necessarily represented by these organizations. What did we found? We unfortunately received less responses from youth and student organizations that we would have hoped. In a lot of the cases, and I was talking with my group, is because in some countries these organizations are not existent, or because they don't have the space to operate. But we did found that 6 out of 10 had been consulted, but only 3 out of 10 actually felt that their inputs had been actually taken into account. So that gave us a lot of food for thought for the future. The report, and I invite you, it's at our website, invites you with some policy-oriented recommendations about how to advance meaningful youth engagement. We also have a mapping of global youth and student organizations, and we have a very fun illustration, and I will conclude with this. Basically, you see, we consulted and co-designed this with youth. We're trying to maybe propose a new ladder because we think that is not linear. So with our young people, with our young colleagues, we proposed a roller coaster because there's a lot of ups and downs on the way. But I think at the center, as this shows, it's a matter of leading with youth. It's this idea of intergenerational dialogue. It's this idea of partnerships. It's this idea of funding, of course. But then there's this idea of interpretation, representation, and inclusion. So I really invite you to access and consult this report. And I hope that it will not stay, as we say, on a shelf, but it actually will be helpful for you, and we can carry this work going forward. So my report will be looking at the shape of the post-2030 agenda, and we really hope that the voices of youth will be at the center as we start having the discussion. So that will be it.
Thank you, Laura. Maybe Jacob, do you think you could maybe hold it up to the camera so that everyone watching? Yeah, I don't know if we can get a zoomed angle.
Very, very good.
Quite
Personal
nice.
assistant.
Yeah. Can you see online? Some of us went to an amazing event. Yeah, there we go.
We can share the link maybe. You can download it, and it has the recommendations at the back.
Brilliant. It's a
This is
really
even
amazing
better.
illustration. Yeah, we've got some heart reacts. Amazing. Thank you for sharing. And if you guys haven't seen already, this report is genuinely an amazing piece of work because it puts data to what so many of us youth are experiencing when we're interacting with organizations. It really puts our struggles into a place that's going to be recognized in an institutional format. Let's go to our final panelist. Nolita, please could you give us one example of how the Club of Rome is supporting the advancement of knowledge and capacities for meaningful youth engagement? Maybe share a bit about yourself, your background, what brings you here.
Oh, I have the opportunity to share about myself. Interesting. Hello, good evening. It is an honor to be able to share about the work that we're doing with the UN Youth Office. I think for many of us this evening, we've heard from a lot of our peers about like the challenges that they're facing, but also they've been like interesting questions. I'm going to steal a little bit about what my friend Max said about the fact that the opportunities to engage in the national level are just as valid, just as important as the opportunities to engage in the international level. But as Zakira said, she had a question about how do we make this more mainstream? How do we create processes? How do we support the creation of processes so that even more young people are able to participate in the decision making and participate in these important processes? So I will take the opportunity to share about myself. I'm the principal for Thank you. I'm the principal for cultural transformation at the Club of Rome. And for the Club of Rome, much of our work centers around intergenerational leadership and how to make it mainstream. So not an ambition that's going to happen in the future. It's not about future leaders, but it is about the practices that we have today. What can we do today to really open that space for leadership between the generations? And it's because we believe that to meet the most ambitious goals that we have for the Sustainable Development Goals, we really need to have everyone's hands on deck. And so that's why I'm so excited to share about this work that we're doing with the UN Youth Office that aims to advance the ambition of Action 36A from the Pact for the Future. Again, Max is in the team working on some of this work. And the pact outlines that governments agree to establish mechanisms to consult with young people. So the agreement is there, apparently. And they agreed to provide us with meaningful opportunities to engage in national policy making and decision making, and that the UN has also committed to supporting governments that request the support to develop these mechanisms. And so this is what this project that the Club of Rome is doing with the UN Youth Office is going to be responding to, is how can we start to support governments to create these mechanisms. And so we've begun and we have embarked on a concrete process to map out what works in youth engagement. This is a study in decision making and looking at what it would take to expand or create these mechanisms in different contexts. And so for the past few months, the UN Youth Office with countries and country teams has created a survey that they've shared with countries so that they can start to share some of this information, put in the links, the data, all of the work that they've been doing. And over the next period, we'll be conducting interviews and having discussions with countries to understand more about what they have seen to work, what they've seen to experience as challenges, and also what they have already established. Because some have already established youth consultations, some have established advisory boards, legal frameworks for participation, et cetera, et cetera. What we want to ask are the questions of what already exists, right? What's created and what needs to be expanded? Where do these mechanisms fall short? And critically, how do we move from consultation to co-decision and from co-decision to co-leadership? And what really, really excites me about this work is that we're not only starting from theory. We're not going to go and sit on our laptops and say, okay, we're going to just Google. I mean, there's a lot of amazing reports that we are already learning from. But what we really want to do is to also work with the evidence that comes from the countries themselves. And so that in the end, we're able to create something that's practical, that's replicable, that we can offer to governments as opportunities to start creating these mechanisms. Because the real truth, and I mean, everyone has said this evening, is that we cannot create the future we want if we don't systematically engage young people and work alongside them to really give them the opportunity and the power to have an impact in the future. And so we are really excited to be embarking in this journey and hope that in another opportunity at another time, we can start to share how this has created a positive impact. Thank you.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Nolita. Can we have a final round of applause for our panelists? Thank you. Over the past 90 minutes or so, we've moved from protest to policy, from frustration to frameworks, and from lived experience to concrete tools. One thing feels clear. Young people are not asking institutions to speak for them, they're asking institutions to change with them. It was incredible to hear about actual frameworks that the UN Youth Office are creating with the Youth Compass. It was really incredible to then hear from young people, from all of you watching online in the comment sections, getting to hear some of your voices. And I know that some of you have had your hands up for such a long time, and I do see you, but unfortunately we don't have time. But I really do appreciate you passionately wanting to get your voice heard. This is what we need, more energy of that. So hopefully you can take that to the forums in your countries or spaces that need to hear from you. So thank you. Thank you to everyone who is here today. I really appreciate you participating in this conversation, for your thoughtful listening skills, for all the voices that you contributed in the workshops. And we're going to hear some final words from two final speakers. First, we're going to hear from wonderful Francois, who is the head of Learning Planet Institute, where we are today. So if we could welcome Francois to the stage.
Thank you, Jade. Thanks to all of you that have participated in many different ways. Some of you, taking the mic, others writing comments or, discussing in smaller groups. I think, this was an amazing moment. And I feel it's, at least for us, a founding moment. But, hopefully, for you, one more step in the right direction, Felipe and all the team, and all the young ones that you have invited to contribute over the months and years. It's been a short couple of years, but it's already amazing what has been done. There is this poet from the 18th century Germany, Hölderlin, that says, "Where danger grows, what saves also grows." I think where I would rephrase his poem saying, "Where danger grows, youth's voice grows." And because you see the danger, I mean, obviously, they are very clear. You have to be blind or pretend you're blind not to see them. But coming together is the best way to make a difference. And that's what you've been doing. Some of you in the streets, some of you here, some of you online, some of you in different places, but you are not taking no for an answer. And I think that's the best news. I come from biology and evolution. We have a great French philosopher that is 104 and is still very young at heart. And he advocates for the metamorphosis. And the metamorphosis is interesting. How do you go from a caterpillar to a butterfly? Well, there is a few cells in the caterpillar that are waiting for their time, and then they are not waiting anymore, and then they transform the caterpillar from the inside, and then they go from this voracious being into one that flies around and start doing making a difference. And so I think that's more or less what's happening. Some people call the butterfly effect. And in the chaotic world, if you're a butterfly, if you flap your wings in the right place, you're going to make a difference. So I see many of this is happening as we speak, and I see the passion that all of you have. This space, I'm glad that we hosted this event here because this space was designed by students for students. And, I think we just launched yesterday the Learning Planet Academy, which is the space where, if you want to learn to do a few more steps in that metamorphosis, you'll be more than welcome. And we would be honored to have you. And I know some of you already asked me if they can come for a master or a PhD or work with us. You'll be more than welcome, because that's what we need. We need your energy, and we need to learn together. I think, none of us has the answer to that metamorphosis, but all of us can contribute to it. And what we're trying to do here is co-design physical, digital space, institutional space, and diplomas where, instead of competing for yesterday's knowledge, you can be invited to cooperate to build the future. And we try to invite the students that don't want to be best in the world for the old world, but want to be best for the world of tomorrow. So, thanks so much for being here. I won't be longer because I'm the last, or the one before last, before the drinks. And I want, of course, to give Felipe the chance to do the concluding remarks. Thank you so much to all of you. And thank you, Felipe.
Thank you, Francois. And it's hard to speak after such a bright mind, if I have to say. I was thinking what to say as you were talking, and this has been like more than 90 minutes, Jade, I have to say. We're fully out of time. Thank you for a wonderful moderation, for making this dynamic, for putting this needed, very positive energy. Thank you to all the panelists, but special thanks for the 128 that are still online. Yes, it's because it's really important for us that you're there, and I know it's never easy to follow, and I'm really sorry for those that were willing to speak, but we didn't have the chance. And I believe that as everything we do in the youth office, it's always a learning experience. So to learn about how, in following spaces, we can give more space for those online that are actually much more than the ones that we were in person here. Thank you to Bianca and Matthew, and on them. Yes. And on them, I'm very proud of the team. in my office, in our office, in the youth office. It's not my office, but it's my team, and I'm very proud about that. The office is of young people, and I hope young people feel that this is their office. And what we're trying to do, and this compass, and I think to conclude today, I will steal a phrase in a roll-up in a banner here that says, it's time to mobilize collective intelligence to tackle the SDGs. Yes. And I would say when we are building this compass, and I think it's a bunch of people coming together from very different sides, doing a lot on the day-to-day, on their space, on what they know how to do, but they're coming together with a common goal. And what we are trying to do as a very lean and agile, if I had to say, at the end, very small team, but agile and lean sometimes look are a more positive way of thinking about an office. It's really mobilizing this collective intelligence that is across all of us. And we're strongly convinced that the momentum is now more than ever. So thank you for coming together. Thank you for the upcoming spaces you're going to join us. I hope many more. I hope you continue to trust in us as a partner. And let's now, for those here, we're going to enjoy some drinks together. And for those online, I hope it's not so late there and you can also close this evening in the best way. Thank you very much. Jade.
Thank you. Okay, before we all run to drinks, 2 points. First point, if you're interested, there is an online event with the Global Student Forum tomorrow at 3 p.m. You can find it on the Learning Planet Festival website, and it'll be an amazing opportunity to continue these discussions, have your voice heard in a global format. So if you're interested, definitely sign up. Secondly, to prove that you were here until the end, come and take a photo. If we get all of you in front of the screen, all of you online, if you want to turn on your cameras, we're going to do a big photo. So yes, and thank you so much to everyone involved in organizing this, tech team. Sorry, I should have done that. Big round of applause. Thank you, everyone. Oh, we can see you all online. This is so nice. Hi, hello. If it's like 2 a.m. and you don't want to put your camera on, that's also okay. Okay, we're just gathering all the people.
Okay, come.
Look at all your smiles. Hi. Hello.
You're great this morning.
Maybe some more.
More to that side, and don't be afraid to stand a little bit by the TV as well. I will not
Get ready, everyone online. Get ready. Yeah, maybe we can duck down a bit so everyone online can be seen too. I can see them wanting their moment. Okay, we're just organizing. Everyone online, get ready. Biggest smile you've ever done in your life. Okay, 1 second apparently. Okay, ready? So we're going to duck. Everyone duck down a bit so everyone online can be seen. Okay, ready? 3, 2, 1, smile. One with energy. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, everyone online. I hope you have a lovely rest of your day, evening, whatever. Thank you.
Just a very, very quick point. Jodie, just at the back, that we've had someone that's been doing graphic facilitation across the whole session. So if you want to explore what she has created, then you can do that in the reception. And just a round of applause for Josie for everything that she's done there as well. Thank you so much.